The silence inside the Yamaha garage following the final session at Bararam was louder than the screaming V4 engines on the front straight, marking a moment where the most anticipated debut in a decade seemed to be unraveling in real time. For months, the motorsports world had been fueled by a singular, intoxicating narrative: the arrival of the Turkish king, Toprak Razgatlioglu, into the elite ranks of MotoGP. He was the man who had tamed the untamable in superbikes, a rider whose physics-defying stoppies and aggressive late-braking maneuvers suggested he could be the one to finally break the European dominance in the premier class. But as the 2026 season entered its opening chapters, the fairytale hit a brutal, unforgiving wall of technical reality. It wasn't just that Toprak was missing from the top of the timesheets. It was the way he looked on the bike. Observers at trackside noted a rider who seemed to be fighting the machine rather than dancing with it. The smooth, surgical precision that defined his championship-winning years in SBK had been replaced by a visible, jagged desperation. In the humid heat of Thailand, the telemetry revealed a staggering truth. Toprak wasn't just struggling with pace. He was struggling with a fundamental disconnect between his instinct and the machine's electronic soul. While the fans expected a revolution, the reality was a technical nightmare that saw one of the world's most talented riders languishing in the bottom half of the grid, looking like a shadow of his former self. Rumors began to circulate that the transition might have come too late, or worse, that the bike beneath him was fundamentally incompatible with his DNA. But while the public began to write him off as a superbike fluke, a select group of Yamaha engineers were staring at a set of data that suggested something far more complex was happening behind those garage doors. Behind the scenes, a quiet war was being waged not against the stopwatch, but against the black circles of rubber that dictate the life and death of a MotoGP lap. The primary culprit behind Toprak's perceived struggle isn't a lack of talent but a technical chasm known as the Michelin Trap. For years, Toprak built his empire on the forgiving, communicative nature of Pirelli tires, which allowed him to slide the bike and feel the limit through the handlebars. In MotoGP, the 2026 spec Michelins operate in a different dimension of physics. These tires don't just require a different riding style, they demand a complete neurological rewrite. According to Paddock insiders, Toprak has been experiencing what engineers call upright instability, a terrifying phenomenon where the bike begins to oscillate and spin its rear wheel while perfectly vertical at speeds exceeding 330 kilometers per hour. The untrained eye, it looks like a rider who has lost his edge, but to those in the pit lane, it is a sign of a rider being sabotaged by his own aggression. The Michelin front tire, which is the cornerstone of MotoGP performance, requires a specific loading technique that contradicts everything Toprak has practiced for a decade. Every time he attempts one of his signature late-braking moves, the tire temperature spikes into a danger zone, causing the bike to understeer and pushing him wide. This isn't just a slow lap time, it's a psychological battle against a tire that punishes the very bravery that made him a legend. Reports from private testing suggest that the frustration has reached a boiling point, with the rider reportedly telling his crew that he feels like he's riding on a sheet of glass. Yet, as the criticism mounted, a shocking revelation surfaced regarding Yamaha's secret development path that changed the entire context of Toprak's failure. In a move that sent shockwaves through the paddock, it became clear that Yamaha hadn't just built a new bike. They had built a weapon specifically for a man who wasn't even winning yet. The narrative of struggle takes a sharp turn when you look at the internal politics of the Yamaha Factory team. For the first time in their storied history, Yamaha has officially retired the inline-4 engine architecture in favor of a radical 90-degree V4 project for 2026. This transition is the most expensive and risky project in their modern era. While many assumed that former champion Fabio Quartararo would be the primary architect of this new machine, paddock whispers suggest a different reality. Internal documents and technical briefings indicate that the V4's torque delivery and chassis geometry were designed around the specific V-shaped cornering style of Toprak Razgatlioglu. This has created a cold war within the garage. Toprak is acting as the ultimate guinea pig, testing experimental engine mappings that are intentionally designed to be difficult to ride in exchange for higher peak performance. The struggle we see on camera is actually a brutal high-speed R&D session. While Quartararo opts for a safer, more consistent setup, Toprak is being pushed by the engineers to find the breaking point of the new engine. This has led to a series of technical setbacks and mechanical anomalies that have ruined his race results, but provided Yamaha with invaluable data. The public sees a rider in 18th place, but the engineers see a pioneer navigating the most complex power curve in the history of the M1. It is a high-stakes gamble that has left the rider looking vulnerable, but it may be the foundation of a future dynasty. But this technical partnership was about to face its greatest threat yet. as a heated disagreement erupted over the physical structure of the bike itself. What started as a technical partnership quickly devolved into a heated confrontation between Toprak's management and the Yamaha brass over the very ergonomics of the 2026 machine. The pressure of the premier class has a way of magnifying the smallest fractures, and for Toprak, those fractures are literal. Standing significantly taller than the average MotoGP rider, Toprak has found himself physically cramped on the 2026 Spec M1. This isn't just about comfort, it's about the physics of weight transfer. At the Jerez test, reports emerged of an intense disagreement between the rider's manager, the legendary Kenan Sofuoglu, and the Yamaha chassis designers. Sofuoglu reportedly argued that the bike's current configuration was suffocating Toprak's natural ability to move his body weight, which is essential for his high-energy riding style. The team responded by making radical, almost ugly modifications to the fuel tank and seat unit, trying to give the rider more room to breathe. However, these changes altered the bike's center of gravity, leading to a series of front-end washouts that destroyed Toprak's confidence. In the garage, the atmosphere has been described as heavily strained, with the Turkish camp feeling that the Japanese engineers are being too rigid in their design philosophy. The conflict reached a crisis point when Toprak was forced to retire from a point-scoring position due to extreme arm pump, a direct result of the ergonomic battle he was losing with the bike. While the headlines focus on the lack of speed, the real story is a war of centimeters and seat heights that has turned the garage into a pressure cooker. Just as the tension reached its peak, a deep dive into the telemetry of the braking zones revealed a statistic so staggering it silenced the entire paddock. While the world looked at the gap in lap times, the data scientists at Magneti Marelli were staring at a graph that defied the established laws of MotoGP braking. There is a secret hidden within the digital noise of the 2026 season. Even though Toprak Razgatlioglu is currently finishing outside the top 10, his entry-phase metrics are rewriting the record books. Investigative analysis of the braking data reveals that Toprak is currently applying 15% more hydraulic pressure to his carbon fiber front brakes than any other rider on the grid, including the legendary Marc Marquez. This is an impossible statistic. He is slowing the bike down from 350 km/h with a ferocity that is literally melting the brake components. In several sessions, the team had to install oversized air ducts just to prevent the carbon discs from oxidizing and disintegrating. This struggle is actually a sign of a rider who is operating at a level of intensity that the current machinery cannot yet handle. He is essentially overdriving the 2026 Yamaha, trying to force it to do things it wasn't designed to do. The technical struggle isn't a lack of pace, it's a lack of a chassis that can survive his violence. This revelation has caused a massive shift in how the paddock views his performance. The shock of his low rankings is being replaced by a terrifying realization. If Yamaha can build a bike that doesn't collapse under Toprak's braking force, the rest of the field is in serious trouble. He is currently a man searching for a machine that can keep up with his own limits, and until that balance is found, he remains the most dangerous slow rider in the history of the sport. With the season reaching its midpoint, the question is no longer if he can adapt, but if the machine will survive long enough for him to succeed. As the paddock packs its bags for the European leg of the Tour, the debate over Toprak's future has reached a fever pitch, with the very definition of a successful debut being called into question. The 2026 season will likely be remembered as the most polarizing debut in MotoGP history. To the casual observer, Toprak Razgatlioglu is a disappointment, a big-name signing who failed to live up to the massive hype. But to the insiders, the struggle is the ultimate smokescreen. Behind the scenes, Yamaha is already planning a massive technical update for the mid-season, one that incorporates everything they've learned from Toprak's failures. This isn't just about 2026, it's about the 2027 regulation shift. By using Toprak to push the current bike to its absolute breaking point, Yamaha is gathering data that will allow them to dominate the next era of the sport. The rider himself has remained stoic, telling reporters that he is learning the language of a new world. But his eyes tell a different story, one of a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The struggle we are witnessing is the process of a champion being dismantled and rebuilt. Whether he will stand on the top step of the podium in 2026 remains a matter of intense speculation, but the technical groundwork being laid is undeniable. The world is shocked because they are looking at the scoreboard. The paddock is watching because they are looking at the future. Toprak isn't failing, he is evolving, and the fallout of that evolution will be felt by every rider on the grid for years to come. The only question remains, will the breakthrough happen before the critics' voices become too loud to ignore? In the high-stakes world of MotoGP, the difference between a disaster and a masterpiece is often just a few millimeters of tire pressure and a lot of patience.